The meeting will please come to order. I would ask everyone to stand for the invocation and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Tonight's invocation is being offered by Council Member Tim Garrett.
Thank you, Madam Vice Mayor. Our most gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for the opportunity to gather here this evening. Be with us now as we conduct our city's business. We ask in Jesus' name, amen.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Without objection, we'll suspend the calling of the roll and ask the clerk to record the names of the members present throughout the meeting. Is there a motion for the adoption of our minutes from October 18th? Second. Without objection, the minutes will stand approved as written. Madam Clerk, are there any messages from the mayor?
There are no messages from the mayor.
Thank you. Councilman Stein.
Thank you, Madam Vice Mayor. The Rules Committee met last week to consider the proposed permanent rules of procedure for this council for 2011-2015. The committee moved to recommend those rules that have been circulated to the entire council by a vote of 8-4, 0 against. I would like to move their adoption and make a brief comment.
We have a motion and a second. Councilman Stein.
I just want to thank the committee for its hard work, thank at least 4 or 5 council members for their suggestions and their work with the committee. I want to thank all those council members who then called with questions, comments, and concerns, and then particularly thank John Cooper for his hard work, and thank Elise Waller for having to retype this about 8 times to get it to us. But with that, I do think that we have made some very positive suggestions, and I would urge the council to adopt these permanent rules. Thank you.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion passes. Councilman Stein.
You do health and education facilities first. The Rules Committee interviewed Dr. Huey Newberry Jr. as our only nominee for the Health, Education, and Facilities Board, and by a vote of 11-4 and none against, recommend him to this council, and I would move, as he is the only candidate and the well-deserved candidate, that he be elected by this body by acclamation.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Dr. Newberry, are you with us? Well, we'll thank him for his service later. Councilman Stein.
With regard to the Industrial Development Board, the committee interviewed the following candidates: Richard L. Fulton, Ms. Ginger Hauser, Mr. J.R. Harrell, Ms. Sharon Hurt, Mr. Garrick Smith, Colonel Robert Whitworth. The committee found by a vote of 10-4 and none against that all 6 of these individuals are qualified to serve. There were 2 individuals that had been nominated, Grace Sasser and Rachel Bell, that have decided not to seek office, and I would move the recommendation to this council that the 6 are certified for election.
We have a motion and a second that the 6 are certified for election. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion passes. I want to talk a little bit about how we're going to conduct this. We will have 3 different elections because there are 3 different positions. We have ballots that we are giving out, and the names of each of the nominate candidates are on there. You may want to cross out the 2 that have withdrawn, or they're ahead of me. They've done that already. Do not circle the name of the person you are voting for. There is a blank where you need to write in the name of the person you are voting for. You will vote for one person on this ballot. Then you need to sign the ballot and write your district number or that you are an at-large candidate. If you don't fill it out correctly, your ballot will be thrown out. So you write in the name of the one person you want to vote for, sign it, give your district, or if you are at large. Then, if one person gets the majority, we will go on to the second one. If there are two candidates receiving the most votes, we will have a runoff on the machine. Then the winner of that election will be removed from your ballot. The one who lost will remain on your ballot and will go to fill the second vacancy and then the third vacancy.
Workers' comp. I was sick last time. I need to you didn't have to cast the tie vote for the pro tem. So I'm so glad I could get workers' comp.
You get a big one.
You only get 4 letters, 8 to F. You got all that.
Madam Clerk?
Berry for Hauser.
Yes.
Stein for Hauser.
Yes.
Garrett for Fulton. Tigard for Smith. Maynard for Hauser. Matthews for Hauser. Harrison for Hauser. Hunt for Hauser. Banks for Hauser. Scott Davis for Hauser. Westerholm for Hauser. Anthony Davis for Hauser. Bennett for Fulton. Pridemore for Smith. Pardue for Smith. Jernigan for Hauser. Glover for Smith. Stites for Smith. Stanley for Whitworth. Claiborne for Whitworth. Tenpenny for Smith. Moore. Moore for Fulton. Allen for Hauser. Gilmore for Hauser. Baker for Fulton. Langster for Hurt. Weiner for Fulton. Evans for Hauser.
Councilmember Evans?
For Hauser. Holloman for Hauser. McGuire for Hauser. Harmon for Hauser. Blaylock for Smith. Dominy for Smith. Johnson for Harrell. Potts for Fulton. Bedney for Fulton. Dowell for Hauser. Duval for Smith. Todd for Hauser. And Mitchell for Hauser.
Gonna have to have a runoff. Do you want to read them in, or what? There'd be a runoff between Hauser, Green, and Smith, Red. Hauser, Green, Smith, Red.
Okay.
We're gonna have a runoff between Hauser got 20 votes, Smith got 9. So we'll have a runoff for the first spot on the machine between Hauser and Smith. Hauser, Green, and Smith, Red.
We'll have a machine vote for the runoff. Hauser received 20 votes, Smith received 9. If you wish to vote for Hauser, you will use your green button. If you wish to vote for Smith, you will use your red button. Madam Clerk, please close the machines and give us the results.
Hauser 27, Smith 13.
Thank you. On our next ballot, you will cross Hauser off. You will write in one person for the second ballot.
If you would like to. No, that might, we don't want to.
Please remember to sign and indicate your district as well. Voting for one person.
Berry for Fulton. Stein for Fulton. Garrett for Fulton. Taggart for Smith.
Councilman Maynard.
Yeah, skipping.
Okay, okay. Maynard for Fulton. Matthews for Fulton. Harrison for Fulton. Hunt for Fulton. Banks for Hurt. Scott Davis for Fulton. Westerholm for Fulton. Anthony Davis for Fulton. Bennett for Smith. Pridemore for Smith. Pardue for Harrell. Jernigan for Whitworth. Glover for Smith. Stites for Smith. Stanley for Whitworth. Claiborne for Smith. Tenpenny for Smith. Moore for Hurt.
Councilmember Moore.
Allen for Harrell. Gilmore for Fulton. Baker for Fulton. Langster for Hurt. Weiner for Hurt. Evans for Fulton. Holloman for Fulton. McGuire for Fulton. Harmon for Fulton. Blaylock for Smith. Dominy for Smith. Johnson for Smith. Potts for Fulton. Bedney for Fulton. Dowell for Hurt. Duval for Smith. Todd for Fulton. Mitchell for Hurt.
So we have 19 Fulton and 11 for Smith.
How many?
So Fulton will be green.
Fulton received 19. Smith received 11. With the machine vote, Fulton is green. Smith is red. Madam Clerk, please close the machine.
Fulton 27, Smith 13.
Okay. On our next ballot, please cross off Fulton and Hauser. Vote for one. Sign your name and indicate your district or at large. Madam Clerk?
Barry for Hurt. Stein for Hurt. Garrett for Smith. Tigard for Hurt. Maynard for Hurt. Matthews for Hurt. Harrison for Hurt. Hunt for Harrell. Banks for Hurt. Scott Davis for Hurt. Westerholm for Hurt. Anthony Davis for Harrell. Bennett for Smith. Pridemore for Smith. Pardue for Smith. Jernigan for Whitworth. Glover for Smith. Stites for Smith. Stanley for Whitworth. Claiborne for Smith. Tenpenny for Smith. Moore for Hurt. Allen for Hurt. Gilmore for Hurt. Baker for Hurt. Langster for Hurt. Weiner for Hurt. Evans for Whitworth. Holloman for Hurt. McGuire for Hurt. Harmon for Harrell. Blaylock for Smith. Dominy for Smith. Johnson for Harrell. Potts for Smith. Bednay for Harrell. Dowell for Hurt. Duval for Smith. Todd for Smith. Mitchell for Hurt.
Green for Hurt. Yeah, well, from Hurt and Smith. Hurt received 19. Smith received 13. Hurt received Green. Smith.
Hurt received 19. Smith received 13. Hurt is green. Smith is red. Has everyone voted? Madam Clerk, please close the machine.
Hart 24, Smith 16.
Thank you. Please stand. Ginger Hauser, Richard Fulton, Sharon Hurt. Congratulations. Councilman Stein.
Madam Vice Mayor, the committee interviewed Ms. Mary Hurt for a reappointment to the Agricultural Extension Board, recommends her 11-4, none against, and I move her approval.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion passes.
Madam Vice Mayor, do we want to take all the members of the beer board together or
That would be
individually? For the beer permit board, the committee interviewed for a reappointment Ms. Ann Arney, for a reappointment Mr. David Sweat Jr., a reappointment Mr. Brian Taylor, and as first-time appointees Mr. James Collier, Mr. Anton Jackson, Mr. Brad Northcutt, and Ms. Shannon Romaine. We approved all of these individuals, 11-4, none against, and I would move for their approval.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion passes.
For the Board of Equalization, we interviewed Mr. Marshall Carr, a first-time appointee, and recommended 11-4, none against, and I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion passes.
For the Gas Mechanical Examiners and Appeals Board, the committee interviewed a first-time appointee, Mr. Milton Henderson, recommends his approval, 11-4, none against, and I move approval.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. Councilman Stein.
For the Historical Commission, the reappointment of Ms. Holly Sharp, the committee voted 11-4, none against, and I move her approval.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion passes.
For the Property Standards and Appeals Board, a first-time appointee, Mr. David Glasgow, the committee voted 11-4, none against, and I move approval.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion passes.
To the Public Records Commission, the reappointment of Mr. Larry McClanahan, the committee voted 11-4, none against, and I move his approval.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion passes.
To the Sexually Oriented Business Licensing Board, the reappointment of Mr. Alan Johnson, the committee voted 11-4, none against, and I move his approval.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion passes.
And last but not least, for the Transportation Licensing Commission, the first-time appointment of Mr. Kurt Wallen, the committee voted 11-4, none against, and I move approval.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion passes. When I call your name, please stand and remain standing. Mary Hurt, Ann Arney, James Collier, Anton Jackson, Brad Northcutt, Shannon Romaine, David Sweat Jr., Brian Taylor, Marshall Carr, Milton Henderson, Holly Sharp, David Glasgow, Larry McClanahan, Alan Johnson, and Kurt Whalen. On behalf of the Metro Council, thank you for your willingness to volunteer your time and your expertise for our great city. We are now at bills on public hearing. First is BL 2011-17, changes 1.36 acres from CS to SP zoning for property located at 3556 Dickerson Pike to permit automobile sales used, automobile repair, automobile service, and all other uses permitted by the CS district. Councilman Hunt.
Madam President, please open the public hearing.
Could I have a show of hands of those who are in support? Thank you. Anyone in opposition, please raise your hand. Seeing no one in opposition, does anyone in support wish to speak? I declare the public hearing closed. Councilmember Hunt.
Thank you, Madam President. I move for approval.
Have a motion and a second. Seeing no discussion, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. Next is BL 2011-18, changes 2.9 acres from AR2A to SP zoning for part of properties located at 4608 Ashland City Highway and part of property located at Ashland City Highway unnumbered, west of Briley Parkway to permit building, contract supply, and all other uses permitted in an AR2A zoning district. Councilmember Matthews.
I'd like to move to open the public hearing, Madam Vice Mayor.
First, we'll need to see the slides.
This is Council Bill 2011-18. It is request to rezone from AR2A to a specific plan for part of properties located at 4608 Ashland City Highway and Ashland City Highway unnumbered. The properties are outlined in red. The Planning Commission recommendation was to disapprove. AR2A zoning is intended for uses that generally occur in rural areas. The SP would allow all uses permitted in the AR2A district, but would also allow building contractor supply use. There are two land use policies on this property. Residential low medium policy, which is intended to accommodate residential development, and natural conservation, which is intended for undeveloped areas with steep slopes or floodplain. The request is to add building supply use, which is not consistent with the residential land use policy. This is an aerial view of the property, and the Planning Commission recommended disapproval because the proposed SP permits a non-residential use that is not consistent with the land use policy.
Please raise your hand if you're in support. Please raise your hand if you're in opposition. Seeing none on either side, I declare the public hearing closed. Councilmember Matthews.
Yes, Madam Vice Mayor. I would like to move approval with a brief explanation.
Have a motion and a second, Councilman.
Thank you. On this piece of property, codes actually went out to this neighborhood, and they found that there were several code violations because someone was operating or storing their contractor supplies on this property. And once those code violations came to me, the property owner actually came and asked me what could he do to come into code. So the property owner, we went to the plan department. We asked what he could possibly do on his property, and the only option he had was to do an SP zoning or change the property to a commercial use, which there's been some concerns going toward the Scottsboro area of development and putting commercial use into that area. And some of the neighbors were really concerned if he would have tried to change the entire property to commercial use. So the neighbors didn't want that, but they were willing to work with him. They met with him several times, and after meeting with him and seeing what his intentions were, and his intentions weren't to have a commercial operations, but just to store some of his equipment that is being used on construction sites until he took the equipment off site. They saw that as very low impact, but they wanted to make sure that of the 300 plus acres that the property owner owns, it was only going to be a small percentage. So they agreed to allow him to do this SP on 3 acres of his property to allow for the storage of that. And with that explanation, I move for approval.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. Next is BL 2011-19, changes 4.24 acres of property within the former city of Lakewood to SP and 61.68 acres to SP for properties at Old Hickory Boulevard unnumbered, 114 Ray Avenue unnumbered, 111 MacArthur Drive unnumbered, Reiner Drive unnumbered, and at Kingsway Drive unnumbered, and a portion of properties located at MacArthur Drive unnumbered and Ray Avenue unnumbered. Councilmember Jernigan.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Please open the public hearing.
If there's no objection, we can take 19 and 20 together. BL 2011-20 rezones property within the former city of Lakewood, 51.81 acres from residential to RS5, 88.05 acres from R to RS7.5, 53.11 acres from R to RS10, 96.14 acres from R to RS15, 2.59 acres from R to R15, 128.92 acres from R to RS20, 0.07 acres from R to R20, 0.13 acres from R to RS30, 0.52 acres from R to RM15, 17.57 acres from commercial limited to MUN, 2.12 acres from commercial to MULA, and 42.55 acres from C to MUL. Councilman Jernigan.
Is that the record for? Move to open the public hearing, please.
Please raise your hand if you're in support. Thank you. Please raise your hand if you're in opposition. Seeing no one in opposition, does anyone in support wish to speak? Seeing none, I declare the public hearing closed. Councilmember Jernigan.
Move to approve.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. Without objection, we'll take 22 and 23 together. Seeing none, BL 2011-22 cancels 7.31 acres of the Willie's Nightlife Commercial Plan Unit Development Overlay District located at 2620 and 2622 Music Valley Drive, Zone CA, and proposed for SP, approved for a nightclub and a maintenance garage. BL 2011-23 changes 7.3 acres from CA to SP for properties located within Willie's Nightlife Commercial Plan Unit Development Overlay District at 2620 and 2622 Music Valley Drive to permit heavy equipment sales and service and all other uses permitted by the CA zoning district. Councilmember Claiborne.
Open a public hearing, please.
Please raise your hand if you're in support. Thank you. Please raise your hand if you're in opposition. Seeing no one in opposition, does anyone in support wish to speak? Seeing none, I declare the public hearing closed. Councilmember Claiborne.
Move for approval.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. BL 2011-24 cancels 1.13 acres of the Music City Outlet Center Plan Unit Development District Overlay for property at 2471 McGavock Pike, Zone CA, and within the Floodplain Overlay District. Councilmember Claiborne.
Open a public hearing, please.
Please raise your hand if you're in support. Thank you. Please raise your hand if you're in opposition. Seeing no one in opposition, does anyone in support wish to speak? Seeing none, I declare the public hearing closed. Councilmember Claiborne.
Move for approval.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. Next is BL 2011-25, changes .02 acres from RS-15 to SP zoning for property at 3810 Kings Lane to permit a sign totaling 96 square feet in size and containing a 33 square foot digital reader board. Councilmember Matthews.
I move to open the public hearing, Madam Vice Mayor.
Thank you. First, we'll see the slides.
Should we pray first?
This is BL 2011-25, and it is a request to rezone from RS-15 to specific plan for a portion of property located at 3810 Kings Lane, and the property is indicated by the arrow, and the Planning Commission recommended disapproval. The RS-10 requires a minimum 15,000 square foot lot and is intended for single-family dwellings. The SP to permit a digital sign and eliminate the distance and height requirements for electronic signs in relation to, the SP is to permit a digital sign and to eliminate the distance and height requirement for electronic signs in relation to residential zoning district. This map shows the surrounding land uses, which are predominantly residential. The land use policy is single-family detached and residential low-medium and is intended for single-family housing. The proposed rezoning to permit an electric sign is not consistent with the residential policy. This is a picture of the proposed sign, and the Planning Commission recommended disapproval of this SP as it is inconsistent with the land use policy and eliminates the distance and height requirements of electronic signs in relation to residentially zoned properties.
Please raise your hand if you're in support. Thank you. Please raise your hand if you're in opposition. Thank you. Those who are in support, who wish to speak, please line up at the lectern. State your name and your address.
Good evening. My name is Glenn Johnson. My address is 2498 Walker Lane, Nashville, Tennessee. I'm here to speak in favor of the sign for one very simple reason. The Temple Church is a very, very important institution in the North Nashville community. We've been laboring for some 35 years now to upgrade the community, to make sure that we can curtail some of the negative things that have been talked about in the North Nashville area. One of the things that the Temple Church does is act as a conduit for information and for communication within the neighborhood. People are always coming to the church asking for food, asking for clothing, asking for properties and instruments for their children to have activities in their neighborhoods, in the communities. And we endeavor to communicate with the community to make sure that they know all the activities that are going on. The sign that is no longer there now was taken down because of the storm back in the spring. Prior to the storm, anytime that we needed to make a change in a message, someone had to climb a ladder to get up and change each letter to communicate to the community what the activities were. And because of the multiplicity of activities that would take place, that meant that somebody had to climb that ladder quite often. With the prospect of having a digital sign erected, or not erected, but replaced, it would facilitate the ability to communicate with our neighbors in a very, very profitable and expeditious way. So with that being said, we would really hope that the council would see the importance of the Temple Church and its endeavor to make sure that the Nashville and the broader community is represented in a very positive light by communicating continuously with the constituency in that neighborhood. We appreciate your approval of us having the sign erected. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
My name is Charles Scott, and I live at 4205 Kings Court, which is not that far from the church. I can see the church from my front yard. We are replacing a sign that was destroyed by a storm. It's no bigger than it was going to be, and the LED part is so that we can communicate with the community. The Kings Lane is the main entryway into our community, and the sign would give us an opportunity to let people know the activities and whatever that are going on in the neighborhood. The people that would be affected have no objections to this. The people that are right across the street, it is 15 feet across the street, but the houses set back somewhere from 50 to 75 feet that would not be affected, and the sign would not be one of those that would keep people up all night. I would appreciate your approval.
Thank you. Seeing no one else in favor wishing to speak, anyone in opposition, please line up at the lectern.
None of them live in North.
Good evening. My name is Mina Johnson. I live at 6600 Fox Hollow Road. I'm from District 23. It is not my intention to interfere the zone change of this North Nashville community. If community at large wants to have LED sign in the middle of residentially zoned district, even it is 15 feet away from one property, 50 feet away from another property, 12 feet high from the ground, but it is not my place to oppose it. However, I am opposing usage of SP zoning to accomplish that goal. I am well aware this is not the first time SP zoning was used to accommodate LED sign. Back in 2009, Good Pasture Christian School in Madison used SP sign to install LED sign. But there is a big difference between that SP and this SP. The Good Pasture SP did not eliminate existing sign ordinance. This SP will avoid, eliminate, disregard not only land use policy, but also existing sign ordinance, which require to existing base zoning. If this type of SP zoning is allowed, where will it stop? What type of land use policy or zoning code are you going to destroy piece by piece? My question to you is it appropriate to deregulate sign ordinance by using SP zoning? I hope your answer is no. And I would like you to remember, SP zoning is specific plan, not sign placement zoning. Please do not create spot problem in everywhere Nashville. Thank you for listening, and please vote no.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Susan Floyd, and I live on Bonner Brook Drive in Hermitage. Let me say welcome to the new council members and hello again to the old. Let me also express my support for churches and the work they do in all of our communities. SP zoning, like Mina said, was created for large specific plans used to maximize the integrity and character of each community in our city. Using SP zoning in this way is nothing more than spot zoning, and it creates a loophole to circumvent the existing law and land use policy. The citizens of Nashville have repeatedly spoken loud and clear, stating their opposition to more LED signs, especially anywhere near residential areas. Just like the recently failed home occupation bill of 2011, the citizens of Nashville clearly demand a divide between their homes and any resemblance of a commercial atmosphere. In 2008, Councilman Stein sponsored BL 2008-201 that protected neighborhoods from LED signs. In fact, this bill prohibited LED message boards and digital display signs in agricultural, residential, mixed use, office, commercial neighborhood, and limited, and some shopping center. This bill was passed by the Planning Commission and Metro Council with overwhelming support. Tonight's bill creates a planning issue, not a political one. When you open the door for this LED sign, you are essentially rewriting the law for some and maybe everyone. Citing the Federal Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Persons Act of 2000, Planning Director Bernhardt stated recently that our city would not be able to turn down future requests for LED signage for any religious institution, whether the neighbors or elected officials liked it or not. In other words, if you approve this sign, we might have no choice but to approve them all or spend our city's resources fighting numerous lawsuits. In my Donaldson Hermitage community, we have many churches and religious institutions built within residential neighborhoods. They blend in and they're part of our residential space. If approved, this bill might very well allow each one of them to have a commercial LED sign, all of which are built to blink, scroll, have pictures, and show video if you just push the right button. While we all know this is illegal under current code, our codes department is complaint-driven and short on manpower. If the signs go in, the citizens will be left to be the sign police again and forced to live in a neighborhood with commercial intrusion. Please vote no on this bill. I don't oppose the church, just the dangerous precedent that this bill creates for all of our neighborhoods. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Adrienne Marinelli. I live at 417 Davidson Road. I'm opposed to this bill because it could affect all neighborhoods that have churches located in them. Davidson Road is a collector street. It has a total of 7 churches and schools located like within 5 blocks. If you pass this bill, any of them could replace their existing monument signs with LED message boards. If they petitioned for zone changes to SP, like a similar request that this church has done, I'm not against churches. I believe it is important for the community to have information. However, if you're in a position like me where I have 7 things that I could pass by every day showing different information, I think it would be very distracting. Right now, schools, churches, and community centers located within residential neighborhoods are not allowed the same latitude as those churches and schools located in commercial districts. It's not an issue of fairness, but what has been determined by zoning codes as appropriate for being in that neighborhood. Religious institutions are allowed to locate in R and RS districts by special exception. LED message boards are commercial intrusion into residential neighborhoods. I just respectfully ask that you set aside councilmanic courtesy regarding this bill and think about, would you like to have this in your own district, because it's going to open it up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, council members. I'm Charlotte Cooper, 3409 Trimble Road, District 34. Thank you for the opportunity to share my concerns with you tonight. This bill represents more than a request from one church in one district. It carries far-reaching consequences. The bill is asking you to disregard land use policy, zoning codes, setback requirements, as well as the community plan. If this bill is approved, it will set a dangerous precedent for all residential neighborhoods in all districts across Nashville. I have heard various opinions as to why this bill should be passed. At the Planning Commission, one person indicated it's a unique area. Another stated that the community wants it. And still a third stated that LED sign issues should be considered on a case-by-case basis. What is good for one community might not be good for another. But these are only opinions, not facts. And the facts are, if you approve this bill, you are allowing SP zoning to rezone an extremely small portion of a 28-acre parcel, 0.02 of an acre to be exact, to be used as an end run around the very codes that were created to protect residential neighborhoods. Was this the intent of SP zoning? I don't think so. But if it is, it means the land use policy for this area, which is residential low-medium density, will be disregarded, ignored. The Metro zoning code prohibiting LED signs in residential areas will be disregarded, totally ignored. And the Metro zoning code pertaining to the setback requirements for LED signs will be disregarded. Now, setbacks are something that have never been disregarded in the previous LED bills, yet this sign is proposed to be 12 feet high and would require a 300-foot setback, yet it will only be 15 feet from the nearest residentially zoned property. It is unclear if the RLUPA, the Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Persons Act of 2000, would affect any future requests, but if it does, then it is an unintentional consequence. So please consider the failure to meet land use policy, zoning codes, and setback requirements, and the precedent that this zoning will create, and please vote no. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Jane Hardy, 208 Elmington Avenue in District 18, and I ask that you not set this precedent. There are a lot of churches in Nashville and a lot of homes near lots of churches in Nashville. From my living room, dining room, and bedroom, I can see the front of three. I live right off West End. I see the front of three wonderful, very large communities of faith. If they each have an LED sign, our home will not be pleasant to be in the evenings. And if you set this precedent, that may happen. So please turn it down. Thank you.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor and members of the council, I'm Gene Tassell, speaking in behalf of Belmont Hillsborough Neighbors and the Nashville Neighborhood Alliance. I want to reinforce what has been said by others and also what has been said by the legal department and the Planning Commission. And let me say thanks. All of us, we need to say thanks to them for their vigilance in finding legal problems before they erupt. This bill, of course, seems to involve a small and harmless change. But as it turns out, it does affect all of the districts and all of the neighborhoods in Metro. Several years ago, of course, the issue of LED signs in residential areas was thoroughly discussed, as many of you recall, and the Metro zoning ordinance still does not permit LED signs in residential districts. Such signs would be inappropriate intrusions in a neighborhood, affecting its quality of life at all hours of the day and night. Since LED signs are not permitted in residential districts, the present bill seeks to rezone a portion of the property to a commercial classification. As the Planning Commission has noted, this is an isolated spot zoning, not in accord with the sub-area plan, and a misuse of SP zoning. But the major problem is that passage of the bill would constitute a precedent for all council districts and all neighborhoods. because a federal law has unpredictable leverage over these matters. It requires consistency in the treatment of all religious institutions. It was passed presumably to prevent discrimination, but the result is a special privileging of religious institutions. There could then be lawsuits in every neighborhood. LED signs might be requested on major thoroughfares and on side streets at a respectful distance from residences and cheek by jowl next to them. And it would happen not through community planning, not through council action, but through the courts. Please do not open this door.
Thank you. Seeing no one else wishing to speak, I declare the public hearing closed. Councilmember Matthews.
Madam Vice Mayor, I would like to move approval with a brief comment, if I could.
Have a motion and a second, Councilman.
Thank you, Madam Vice Mayor. We've received a lot of communication from community, both in support and both in opposition of this through email. I've talked to several people over the phone about this particular bill, and I know others have as well. The Vice Mayor has done something that I admire in setting a tone and a culture for this council, and she has respectfully asked us to really adhere to that culture, and she has even introduced some of the new council members in a letter that she sent to us earlier, asking us to really use committee as far as our debate and going back and forth on different issues. So I'm not going to speak too long tonight if I don't have to. I'm prepared to talk all night about this bill. I have several things that I'm looking forward to say. Several council members have PowerPoint presentations that they're ready to present. And I think that this is an issue that we definitely need to discuss. Whether you support it or whether you don't support it, the council needs to make a decision and act on this, because this will not be the last time we will hear about LED signs. This won't be the last time we're going to hear about them near residential areas. And we did put together a task force, and after that task force was put together, there really wasn't any action taken as far as recommendations to the council, and we really hadn't made a decision about this. So I'm going to urge everyone to support this on second reading. Let this go into committee. Let's have debates and discuss it then, and then we'll go to third reading. And anyone that served with me, that's serving their second term, I think they know me to be a reasonable person, and I try to be a reasonable leader in my community. Any of the new council members, I hope that you get to know me as that type of a leader. This is not something that I'm going to try to push through. I want to try to find a place of resolve, and I think that that's what we're elected to do, and that's what we all should strive to do with any issue that comes before us on the council. So I do want to address some of the concerns that have been raised, and I think that the appropriate thing to do is allow this to go to committee, have the discussion, have the debate, and then go forward from there. So with that said, I again renew my motion to approve.
Councilmember Todd.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I'm going to vote for this tonight. I agree with Councilman Matthews that we ought to use the committee process and keep this moving along. But I do have serious reservations about that this could set a precedent. And for the newer people on the council, dealing with signs is one of the most difficult things we have to do. And we talked a lot about it last term and didn't really resolve the issue. But I think for this to get through on third reading, we're going to have to figure out whether or not this sets a precedent for the city. And I'm concerned about that. I think if people in a district want a LED sign or whatever they want, I think those people should control. If this church wants an LED sign and all the neighbors are okay with it, that makes sense. But if people in East Nashville or South Nashville don't want to have the same policies, we need to think through a way to protect those homes. And so again, I think Councilman Matthews is right. Let's approve this tonight. Let's debate it. But we've got to figure this stuff out. I had a conversation with John Cooper, and there's been a lot of talk about the Religious Land Use Act, and very complicated statute. We had to go to a special meeting last term because we screwed something up. We had a special seminar just on this statute. I'm a lawyer and still don't understand all the intricacies with this statute. I think the acronym is pronounced RLUIPA, but I don't think it applies here. So the arguments that we're setting a precedent here, I don't think apply. But I do think there are other kind of constitutional issues that if you allow one church to do this, there's probably an equal protection argument or some other argument that other churches get to do this, even if they're in a neighborhood where people don't want that. So we've got to figure this stuff out. I don't know if we have, I don't know what the solution is, Councilman Matthews, but maybe, you want an amendment to say this is district by district if we can, or
I think when we get into the committee discussion, then we can start talking about amendments. Probably right now, before it's referred to a committee, is not the time to do that.
I agree, but I just am suggesting to the council that we, move this along and follow the procedures you've outlined, Vice Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Holloman.
I was basically just going to say what Councilman Todd said. I certainly respect Councilman Matthews and understand what he's trying to do here, and I'm going to support this tonight, but a lot of the calls and emails that you've received have come from my constituents, and I have to respect that as well. And I do think that there are some legal issues here that we have to work through, and we get an analysis from our legal department before third reading, and I hope that we'll use that as a tool and pay attention to it when that comes in. And so with that, I'm going to vote for this on second, but hope to work with you between now and then.
Councilmember Evans.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. And I'm sort of where my colleagues are on this. Councilman knows how much I like and respect his work in his district. But I was, and some of you were there too, when the SP zoning category was created in, I believe it was '06, there was a lot of discussion amongst neighborhood groups and a lot of discussion amongst council members and the planning department about how dangerous a tool it can be. While it gives a lot more flexibility to developers to create projects that are site-specific, it also can be used in a way that isn't good for neighborhoods. There's a lot of discussion about that at the time that the SP zoning was enabled, and unfortunately I see this use, which I think it's really not a rezoning, it's a signed permission, as fulfilling that concern, and so I don't think this is an appropriate use of the zoning code. I don't know anything about RLUIPA or ALUPA or Lollapalooza, but I do not think this is an appropriate use of the zoning code. So I'll stick with the councilman on second, but I won't be there on third unless something changes.
Councilmember Allen.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I would like to echo again, I've heard from many of my constituents and hope that we can have some discussion so that what I hear now from my constituents is much concern about the use of an SP to do this. I'd like to ask if it's possible to have some legal clarification very, very concisely tonight with regard to due process and equal protection under the law as opposed to the
We can really do that in the committee once it's referred. Councilmember Claiborne.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. I'd just like to be on the record as saying that I will be voting against the bill tonight in order to be consistent with my action and my vote on the Planning Commission last week when the Planning Commission unanimously turned this down.
Councilmember Baker.
Previous question.
All in favor of previous question, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Previous question passes. All in favor of BL 2011-25, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Councilman Claiborne is noted. Thank you, Councilman Matthews, and Councilman Tigert, and Councilman Hunt. Next is BL 2011-26, amends the Metro Code by adopting procedures for the measurement of street setbacks for local streets and the measurement of street setbacks within urban design overlays. Councilmember Claiborne.
Open a public hearing, please.
Please raise your hand if you're in favor. Please raise your hand if you're in opposition. Seeing none on either side, I declare the public hearing closed. Councilman Claiborne.
I would move to defer this bill indefinitely.
We have a motion and a second to defer indefinitely. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Indefinite deferral passes. Next is BL 2011-27, amends Metro Code by adding a note to the district bulk tables to clarify minimum lot requirements when a right-of-way dedication is required. Councilmember Claiborne.
Open the public hearing, please.
Please raise your hand if you're in support. Please raise your hand if you're in opposition. Seeing none on either side, I declare the public hearing closed. Councilmember Claiborne.
Move for approval.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. BL 2011-29 amends the Metro Code relative to electronic billboards and nonconforming signs. Councilmember Claiborne.
Open the public hearing, please.
Raise your hand if you're in support. Please raise your hand if you're in opposition. You're in opposition. Seeing no one in support, does anyone in opposition wish to speak? I declare the public hearing closed. Councilmember Claiborne.
Yes, ma'am. I would like to move to withdraw this bill with a brief explanation.
Have a motion and a second. Councilman Claiborne.
When this bill was written, I was the primary request behind the bill because there is a need for us to establish a definition for the destruction of a sign. And as the bill was taking form, Council Lady Johnson had a sign issue that she wanted to address, and it was the consensus at the time that the two issues could coexist with each other in the same bill. But as it's moved forward, there are some limitations, some conflicts, and in talking with Mr. Cooper and with Council Lady Johnson, it is a decision to withdraw the bill. There is a bill in the first reading packet that is in the agenda tonight that addresses the portion that I was concerned with in trying to establish the definition of a destruction of a sign. And so that bill will be coming forward, but I renew my request to withdraw BL 2011-29.
All in favor of the motion to withdraw, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. BL 2011-30 amends the Metro Code to prohibit the conversion of nonconforming static billboards to tri-face billboards. Councilmember Johnson.
I move to open the public hearing.
Please raise your hand if you're in. Sorry, you have to defer because the Planning Commission has not made a recommendation.
Okay. I move to defer
to the January public hearing.
Okay, so the January public hearing.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. Councilmember Stein.
The Rules Committee considered the consent agenda resolutions that include 65 through 73, approved all of them 11-4, none against, and I would move that consent agenda.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion passes. Councilman Stein.
On the resolution 2011-74, which approves the election of certain notary publics, the committee considered that, approved it 11-4, none against, and I would move approval, and I may have gotten ahead of the vice mayor, and I'm sorry if I did.
No, you're fine.
Okay. I would move approval.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
And there are two late bills.
There are two late filed resolutions which basically codify what we did earlier. The first one is that Dr. Huey Newberry has been confirmed to be a member of the Board of Directors for the Health and Education Facilities Board, and that we elected Ginger Hauser, Richard Fulton, and Sharon Hurt to the Industrial Development Board.
I would move to suspend the rules to consider these. Obviously, we could not approve these prior to the election, and the committee did not hear this. I'd ask the council to consider them as a committee of the whole, but I move to suspend to adopt these two resolutions.
I see no objection, Council.
Then I move approval of both resolutions.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion passes. We're now at bills on introduction and first reading. Is there a motion for their approval? Second. All in favor, please say aye. Is there a motion to adjourn? All in favor, please say aye. Thank you.